When most of you hear the word instrumental, some of your first thoughts will be classical stuff like the stuff you hear in movies, games, or in high school music classes. For me, well, I know my words may trigger someone to make another "did you just call classical music boring?" type of video. I see instrumental music go beyond that, genres, countries, and cultures, centuries. So with that introduction, let's get out of this generic concert hall and right into the top 10 instrumental music albums of all time. Let's do this.
Don't let him into his zone. Don't let him into his zone. You just let him into his music nerd zone.
Hello everybody, welcome to this week's Don't Let Me Into My Zone music review series done by yours truly, the biggest music nerd VTuber Starpunk, MB. Yeah, from that intro you could already guess what this review is about, my top 10 instrumental albums of all time. And if you guys want to see my other music reviews along with my streams, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow me on my other social media platforms to support me on my endeavors as I do tons of stuff as a VTuber, which includes these based reviews. Anywho, this review was actually tough to do. I thought I had a rough idea of a top 10 when it comes to instrumental stuff, but you have to imagine being in my shoes after seeing how instrumental records spans all genres and centuries. But luckily, since I am yours truly, MB, I managed to compile 10 records that I consider the best instrumental albums out there, which I believe everyone should give a spin when they have a chance. Now, let's get this review started with number 10. Onetrix Point Never, the man known for the early days of Vaporwave and will carry on his talent with creating music from sampling and the synthetic sounds of MIDI instruments. This album, R+7, described by Lopatin to be a calm record influenced by his personal experience of domestic bliss. I still find it amusing to find this record discussed in a Liminal Space video on YouTube that I randomly was watching one night due to its album art. Aside from that, I would consider this record to be domestic bliss once you give it a go. A great example of that is Zebra and Americans. And now, number 10 is done, let us move on to number 9. When it comes to anything drone, this right here is the magnum opus of the genre drone, because it's supposed to represent more than music. According to Coil, this project was supposed to represent binaural technology that was supposed to produce the subliminal effects which induce you to time travel. Well, I already do time travel a lot with the constant sleep I put myself through throughout the day whenever I find a warm spot. But knowing that this record is recommended to listen to while you are asleep with a headset, I can imagine that the time travel effect I usually have would be really felt thanks to this record. I just find it cool how through music, artists have created experimental pieces that would induce the feeling of time travel. Wow, I can't believe we finally found out about time travel. Now with number 9 over, let's move on to number 8. An interesting comment I saw for the upload of this album I saw on YouTube, the next Hanging Gardens, was a commenter compared this to this being a cross between Miles Davis's A Silent Way and Pink Floyd's Interstellar Overdrive. And I can hear that while listening to this long, minimalistic, avant-garde jazz piece. You can find yourself getting lost to the atmosphere the next creates with this piece, but the drumming that Tony Buck is able to play throughout the 60 minutes is probably one of my favorite forms of drumming I have heard in music, even if it is minimalistic. Aside from shilling myself all the time on this channel, I will shill the next this time, a cult classic group from Down Under. I highly recommend you give their atmospheric, minimalistic jazz pieces a go whenever you feel like you need to lay back with a pair of headphones. And now let's move on to number 7. I hate math, but I love math rock. Duh! This record by Don Calabero is their magnum opus when it comes to their brand of instrumental math rock, which with a totally rad title to boot, alongside with a snazzy album art. Seeing how the band took on more calculated form of expressing their music, if you don't focus, you'll miss a lot of things. A good example being how the drums can end up being the front runner for most of the songs on this record, which is totally snazzy for a drumhead like me. Now that we're done number 7, we move on to record number 6. American Primitivism. Most people may know it because of John Fahey, but for me, I still consider Rainy Day Raga by Peter Walker to be one of the greats within the instrumental traditional American-inspired genre, and that is why it's number 6 on this review. Surprisingly, aside from the finger-picking techniques on the guitars that sound like the pacing of raindrops, There's also some droning notes in here from the guitars, making it feel like a long, gentle rainy day. You're witnessing outside the window as you stay indoors because, of course, right, it's good to look at from indoors, but it's not when you go out. But anyways, let us move on to number 5 when it comes down to this review. Ashra Temple with this album created a perfect piece to accompany a space-based public television programming broadcasts like Jack Horkheimer's Stargazer. But Manuel Gottschalk, one of the most important folks to the birth of electronic music, created a record that is able to take you through the depths of the ocean right into the aimless, unknown journey through the cosmos. And that is why I put New Age of Earth into number 5 of my top 10 instrumental albums list. And you know what? I highly recommend you listen to this while you look up articles about the cosmos. Now let's move on to number 4. Post-rock, our good old, usually instrumental rock genre with tons of crescendos and stuff. But alas, even if this record is guilty of the many tropes that second-wave post-rock bears, I still believe that Enjoy Eternal Bliss has met its rightful place in number 4 in my top 10 instrumental albums of all time. Because as soon as you spin this record, some of the most beautiful instrumental guitar pieces will be heard. And you want to know what is a good example of that? Well, you would just be laying back with some headphones and listening to the song Dash and Blast. Beautiful crescendo riffs accompanied with violins. It's truly something that would make you feel like you're enjoying eternal bliss. And with that, we move on to our top 3 instrumental records of all time, starting with number 3. Terry Riley's In C has been reimagined many times, but Africa Express has brought us the essential version of this legendary minimalistic composition, and that is why Africa Express presents Terry Riley In C Mali has been number 3 in our top 10 instrumental records of all time. And you know what? I consider African music to be one of the most life-filled genres of music out there, and this rendition of In C adds so much life and spirit to this minimalistic composition. Honestly, I do find it quite amazing to know how different this version is from the original. Both have a lot to offer from their own aspects, but the fact that I'm able to feel like I'm in the, of course not predator-filled savannas of Africa while listening to this piece is truly an amazing experience, and which is why I consider this my favorite version of NC. And now, we move on to number 2. It's quite interesting that I started off this review discussing classical music. When most people think of this album, they think of the early father of post-rock, or one of the most compelling albums to come out of the no-wave scene. As for me, I would say Glenn Branca was one of the biggest boundary-breaking composers and guitarists, so with the creation of this record, it doesn't really surprise me how this record has been influential to many artists over the years, and why it's number 2 in our top 10. But you know what? This album literally lives up to its name, and it's probably one of the earliest examples of how powerful the guitar can be once it becomes a main star of the music. And now with that, we move on to number 1. Well, we had to put an obvious choice in here. I would have put Coliseum Mama since that is my favorite Coltrane studio album, but alas, it contains vocals and singing, so it doesn't really count. No, the quartet mumbling, singing, and a Love Supreme in this record doesn't count. Aside from that, I went with my second favorite record by John Coltrane, the turning point in Train's career when people witnessed him going from the traditional post-bop era right into the spiritual avant era of jazz music. Still, a perfect resting place between fans of the avant side, for example me, and those used to his earlier works. It's truly a wonderful record representing a love supreme from a higher power, and each track displays the spiritual connection John's quartet has with this music. It's truly a sight to believe, and I can see why many others consider this to be one of the greats when it comes to jazz records. And with that, this concludes my 7th installment of my music review series, Don't Let Me Into My Zone. I have many more cool ideas for future music reviews to come, but you're just gonna have to wait, and I hope I don't do them last minute like I did with most of the reviews. But anyways, once again, don't forget to listen to the records and to follow yours truly on YouTube and my other platforms to motivate this sloth to prove that I'm the most based VTuber, not only with streams, but with the great reviews I used to share my one hobby that I loved before becoming a VTuber, a music listener. Anyways, take care and stay based. Peace!